My name is Faith Dukes, and I manage our K-12 outreach and education programs as a part of our Government and Community Relations Office here at Berkeley Lab. Each of these sessions allows us to explore a particular subject and speak directly to experts that are conducting work in that particular field here at Berkeley National Lab. Some quick reminders and information. As we begin, I'd like to share that you can download, if you haven't already, an accompanying worksheet that you can find on our Berkeley Lab K-12 STEM education website. The website is being posted in the chat below. We encourage you to use the chat box, and we will be checking for your questions and comments throughout this session. And yes, we are recording it, and you will be able to see it and find it on our website next week. If you haven't already been a part of any of the K-12 programs here, you'll know that we are Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, Berkeley Lab for short. It's one of 17 national labs funded by the Department of Energy and the workplace of 14 Nobel laureates. You can see us on this map created by symmetry.org. National labs were created to bring researchers together in order to share expertise and sometimes very large and expensive equipment to tackle big problems. We like to call that team science here at Berkeley National Lab. If you have a chance, you should check out this interactive map that Symmetry magazine created to learn a little bit more about each of the 17 national laboratories. On the next slide, you can see an aerial view of Berkeley Lab. We like to call this the best view from a lab. We are sandwiched just below Lawrence Hall of Science, and in between, below us is the University of Berkeley, or UC Berkeley for short. If you're interested in hearing more about the lab, our facilities and research, you can also join a virtual public tour twice a month. So that link is also posted in our chat box. Today, we have a special topic. It's all about particles, and we will be learning how to recognize these particles in the wild and then become a particle detective to try to spot some of our own. So that's our theme, and you may have heard our Pink Panther theme in the beginning to talk about being a detective. All right, so here are some vocabulary words that you will hear over the next hour and are captured in our worksheet that you can download. As you may have noticed, we are going to talk about materials that are very, very, very small. Particle detectors decay atoms, which includes the nucleus, electrons, protons, neutrons, a radioactive source, cosmic rays, muons, ionization, and tracks. Those are some of the things that we'll be talking about over the next hour. But our first question of the day is simply, what are particles? Answer in the chat box and let us know, what are particles? In order to get some of those answers answered by an expert, we are going to call on our first detective and researcher, Dr. Maria Zurich, who is a postdoc in the Nuclear Science Division here at Berkeley Lab.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. I am searching for I'm looking at some answers in the chat. So I'm just reminding that our poll question is, what are particles? Okay, so I see a really tiny atom. Yeah, it's something very tiny. It's something connected with an atom. It's a good track. Something that makes up everyone's body. That also sounds very, very good. Very small amount of matter, very good. Dust particle, yes, dust, I agree. Dust is also some sort of particle, more macroscopic one. Building blocks of matter, okay, that's very precise. So before I will give you my answer, I would like to tell you how small the particles are. So let's look, what does it really mean by small? Okay, so we will go for a journey inside the matter. And it starts at the macroscopic scale of about 1 meter. From the size of a human or sunflower, we move towards smaller and smaller objects like an egg or a coffee bean, as you can see. We pass the scale of 1 millimeter, which is a size of a grain of salt or sand, and we move towards objects not visible to a naked eye. From here, we pass the size of a transistor gate and DNA to get into objects in nanoscale. about nanoscale, nanomolecules, nanotubes, nanoballs during the last life science event. And today, we will be actually looking even deeper into the structure of matter. We move towards the world of atoms and go further into the scale of atomic nuclei, which are very, very, very small. We have to really scroll down there. From a complex nuclei like uranium, we reach the simpler helium nucleus. You see there's lots of scrolling down. It's a really huge difference in size. And then finally, we reach protons and neutrons, which we'll be talking today about. We are now at the scale of 1 femtometer, which is a typical scale for the nuclear physics. And from there, we can actually go even further toward even smaller particles like quarks, we will learn about today, which as far as we know cannot be divided further. Okay, so you gave me your answers, and actually everything we know is built from these simple units. So let's take a deeper look into the smallest particles that build our world. Okay, we start with atoms. You may have heard probably in your class about water molecule, for example, and these are made of oxygen and hydrogen atoms. Atoms themselves are actually not the smallest units. They can be broken down further into electrons and atomic nuclei. Nuclei are made of protons and neutrons, and protons and neutrons can be divided further into quarks and gluons, as you can see here on this picture. As far as we know, quarks and gluons cannot be divided further. Therefore, we call them fundamental particles. Why do you think we want to detect particles? There's some answer. Quarks can be broken into tiny strings. Yes, physicists are working on it. We haven't measured them yet. If we measure them, yeah, we have something to learn more about universe. That sounds cool. So we know how they run because it's fun. Yes, there are lots of fun answers. Great. To learn more about our universe, I like this answer. I like all the answers. So with this, I would like actually to introduce you to our next particle detective from the Nuclear Science Division of Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Ladies and gentlemen, and those beyond the binary, Rebecca Carney, Dr. Rebecca Carney. Or
hello, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Detective Maria. It's Detective Rebecca here. Nice to see you. Well, I'm really impressed with what I've seen so far, so I'd like all the junior detectives out there to get on their thinking caps and gear up, because now we're going to go find some particles. So the job of a detective is to search for clues and use them to find things out, right? So let's start here, fellow detectives. What can you tell me on this slide? Use your powers of deduction and answer in the chat box. What's on this slide? Yes, so Mustafa has it straight out the bag. There are some car tracks and also a detective cat. But let's talk about the car tracks. So tire tracks here tell us that a vehicle has passed this way. And notice how the two tracks are also different. That likely means the tires are also different. Okay. So we know that cars and bikes leave tire tracks, but this tells us things. We know that a vehicle has passed. We can probably tell what sort of vehicle based on the shape of the tracks, and maybe even some other things, like how heavy it was, depending on how deep the tracks are. So detectives, Maria just told us some information about particles. Can you tell me, or can you try guessing, what sort of clues a particle might leave behind for a detective that would allow us to find it? Answer in the chat. What would a particle leave behind as a clue? Tracks, says Zach. Indeed, but what does that mean? It would leave a trail. Interesting. Yes, thank you, Erin. Oliver says an energy shadow. That's a very interesting idea. I wonder what an energy shadow is. Pranav says prints. So these are all really great suggestions. I also saw that somebody mentioned mass. So mass is a good answer. That's the weight of the particle, could leave something behind, maybe in the shape of a track that somebody else suggested. But actually, I believe another friend of mine from the lab also has an idea. So I'd like to introduce you all. Please give a warm welcome to Detective Joanna.
Hello, fellow detectives. Rebecca, I was thinking, do particles have electric charge? Can we use that?
I think that's a really good idea. Can you tell us actually a bit more about your idea and how charge could leave us clues to find particles?
Absolutely, I will. But first, let's go back to Maria and learn more about particles in the world around us.
Okay.
So we are back to our fundamental particles. Remember, we were traveling deeper and deeper into the structure of matter, and in the very end, we've seen particles which couldn't be divided further, and we call them fundamental. This is the wheel of all fundamental particles, the most basic building blocks of our world, which we mentioned already. You can see here quarks and the gluon we were mentioning, also electron, which we mentioned before, and many other particles. But today we will focus only on few of them. So the subset of the fundamental particles we are focusing on today is highlighted on this slide. Just to stress, we need all these particles to build our universe, but there are only a few of them we encounter on a regular basis. And we met already today quarks, gluons, and electrons while we were talking about atoms. So let me remind you, quarks and gluons build protons and neutrons, which form the atomic nucleus. And atomic nucleus is located in the center of the atom, and it's surrounded by a cloud of electrons. And speaking about electrons, I also want to introduce you to a heavier cousin of electron called muon. They both have an electric charge, but muon is a bit heavier, chubbier. And muons are actually very common guests on Earth. They come to us from atmosphere. And I think that Rebecca has a footage of muons for us.
Hi, Maria. That's right. So a few weeks ago, the particle detectives you've met today actually went and filmed a very special detector here in Berkeley Lab. So we're going to watch a video now of some footage we took of that detector running last week. So in the chat again, I'd like you to tell me what you see on the screen. What is being shown in the video? I know it's quite dark, but I think every now and then you should see something. Mustafa says red lights. Okay. Flashes. Thank you, Simon. Yes. I'd say that accurately sums it up. So I'd say they're more pink than red, but I guess the color doesn't really matter. So we might also see that the lines are going in a particular direction. They're all quite vertical, aren't they? So it seems like maybe something is either coming from the ceiling or coming from the ground. Explosions. They do look a bit like explosions. I would say even maybe they look like pink or red lightning. Okay, but let's talk about what those pink flashes actually are. So what that detector that you just saw a video of is something that's actually called a spark chamber. And what we were seeing there were tracks of the muon particles that Detective Maria just introduced us to. So take a look at this picture on the slide. What you're seeing here in the picture is charged particles called cosmic rays. And these cosmic rays actually come from deep space. The cosmic rays then travel to Earth and decay in the Earth's atmosphere, and they produce a shower of particles that actually includes muons. And the muons in this picture are the solid orange tracks. Now, what's amazing about muons is that these particles have been raining down on you from outer space, traveling all the way from outside the galaxy towards us, since before you were born, and they will continue raining down on you for the rest of your life. You can't feel them, you don't notice them. So if you're around the age of 10 to 12 years old, based on the surface area of your hand, if you look at your hand, that surface area, there'll be about 100 muons passing through it every minute. So there's more than 1 a second passing through your hand. And it's not just happening on your hand, of course, it's happening all over your body every day since before you were born till the day you die. I think that's pretty cool. Okay. So I have to say, detectives, I'm very impressed with these juniors. They've all been sitting very patiently and still for a while now. So I think it's time for a stretch break. So if you're able to, I'd like you to all please stretch out your arms like this. This will maximize your surface area to catch more muons. And I believe we're going to have a count down our stretch time.
We've looked at detector that shows us muons coming from space and electrons that transmit electricity. But now we will scale things up and try to look at more complex particles that are built from quarks and gluons, namely our good friends, protons and neutrons. The proton has a positive electric charge and the neutron is neutral. We already know that protons and neutrons together with negatively charged electrons form atoms. Let's look at some very special atom right now. So on this slide, we have 2 of everything, 2 protons, 2 neutrons, and 2 electrons. Does anyone know what atomic element has 2 protons? 2 protons and 2 neutrons. I see the good answers. It's helium. Yes, the nucleus of helium is called an alpha particle. Do you know how we can track the helium nucleus? In what detector?
I'm not sure, Maria. Could we use the spark chamber again?
We actually could. That would certainly work, but instead I like to take this opportunity to introduce you to a detector called the cloud chamber. And I believe that one of our detectives is in the lab right now with a cloud chamber. Is that right?
Hi, Detective Maria. Yes, welcome to my lab. It's a bit dark in the back here right now, but that's because I want to give you the maximum opportunity to be able to see the cloud chamber at work. So let me just switch my camera so you can take a look at it. Okay. Now, I'm going to do that thing again I asked you to do earlier, and tell me in the chat box exactly what you're seeing on screen right now. And this is live. There's my fingers. What do you see? There's lots of different parts going on here, but let me know in the chat box. Jorge says, marvelous. I agree, it is marvelous. Something underneath of helium. Orange tracks probably of helium. That's a good guess. Shiny particles. Tracks. Okay. Well, I'm going to walk you through it. So, junior detectives, I'm very impressed with your powers of observation, so let's go over this. So what we have here is a big chamber with some bright lights, some LEDs. And what you can actually see, and maybe you can kind of see this, I'm not sure how good the quality of the camera is, but maybe you can see something that looks like a fine mist raining down. So this isn't water, this is actually an alcohol that's raining down in a mist and forming a cloud at the bottom of this chamber. And those lines you see are indeed tracks. But does anyone notice what direction the tracks are coming from? The center, yes, indeed. So what we have at the center here, I'm not going to touch it because I don't want to bother it, but this guy, this is actually a long pole with a needle tip on the end, like a sewing needle. And in the eye of that sewing needle is actually a radioactive element called polonium-210. Now, what happens is this element releases alpha particles, the helium nuclei that Maria was telling you about. It releases those particles at a high energy as it decays. And that pattern we're seeing right now, where there are tracks appearing and disappearing in that alcohol cloud at the bottom of the chamber, are actually alpha particles flying out of the needle and traveling through the cloud. So the cloud chamber is really cool because you can actually see tracks from these absolutely tiny particles, smaller than microscopic, with your eyes. And if you wanted to analyze some of their properties, you could even take photos of them and do some measurements with a ruler. Later. Here we go. I see the comic strip now. And these cartoons, I should mention, were actually drawn by a senior scientist here at the lab and a MacArthur Genius Award recipient, Dr. Carl Haber. And he's got lots of really cool cartoons. So thanks to Dr. Haber for letting us use these. All right, so why did someone decide to use a cloud chamber to begin with? Well, this gentleman, Charles Wilson, was actually really fascinated by optical phenomena and cloud formation. He was so interested that around 130 years ago, he went to the highest mountain in the UK. And at the top of the mountain is actually a really cold research center that's used to study things like cloud formations. Now, it's at the top of a mountain because you get clouds up there, and you get clouds up there because the air pressure is very low and moist. So whilst he was up there, freezing, he thought about how he could recreate clouds and study them in a bit more of a cozy environment back in his lab. So back in the lab, he built a cloud chamber and filled it with humid air. Now, we mentioned this briefly, but to create a cloud, you need to force any water or liquid in the air to make droplets. And that requires either a drop in pressure or temperature or both, just like that cold lab at the top of the mountain. So when Wilson made a cloud, he used a vacuum. And when I say vacuum, I mean something that sucks air out of a system, just like your vacuum cleaner at home. Now, this vacuum caused large drops in pressure and it forced droplets to form in the humid air. So when he activated his vacuum, he could create tiny clouds in his chamber for a few seconds. So on the next slide, we have a photo of what Wilson's chamber from 130 years ago actually looked like. It's a bit different to our cloud chamber that we have here in the lab today. So someone in the chat, tell me any differences you see between this chamber on the slides from Dr. Wilson and the one that you can see here in my lab. Any differences? They're both circular, cylindrical, so that's not a difference. No LED lights, says Min. That is correct. There were no LEDs back in the day, but actually at the top on the left of the photo, he did have some lights. The vacuum is different. One has radio particles. Interesting. I'm not sure what a radio particle is. So one of the big differences, yes, Aaron's got it. Thank you, Junior Detective Aaron. There is no big glass bubble on my detector, which to be fair, you can't necessarily see in the shot I'm showing you, but you'll have to take my word for it. So the bubble on Wilson's cloud chamber on the slide is the vacuum tube that's needed to create the cloud that causes that pressure drop we talked about. But our diffusion cloud chamber here does something a bit different. We don't suck air out of the cylinder, so we have the same pressure all the way through the depth of the cylinder. So the way we actually create clouds is by using a difference in temperature between the top and bottom of the chamber. So at the bottom of the chamber, we have a cooling element that creates a large temperature gradient, and this allows clouds to form at the bottom, and that's how you're able to see these tracks. So that's basically it. That's how you make a cloud in a box.
Okay, but how do we use this to detect particles?
Well, that actually has to do with a process called ionization. Let me tell you about that. So in school, you've learned about atoms, and you know that an atom with one proton has one electron. An atom with two protons has two electrons. When an atom has the same number of protons and electrons, it has a net negative charge of 0. It's neutral. But if their protons and electrons are not balanced, then the atom has a charge, and that is an ion. So if you give an atom an extra electron, like in the middle here, then that atom has a negative charge. It's a negative ion. And if we take an electron away from an atom, like on the right, then that atom now has a positive charge. It's a positive ion. So now I have a question for you in the chat box. Please let me know, do positive and negative charges attract or do they repel? Yes, yes, you are right. I'm seeing good answers. Positive and negative charges do attract. So the proton and the electron, they like sticking together. However, electrons can still be stolen away from atoms, even though they like sticking with the protons. So here in this little video that's about to play, we'll see an alpha particle go past an atom, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so here the alpha particle is passing our atom, and it grabs an electron from it and steals it away, ionizing it. So now the atom that used to have the same number of protons and electrons, now it has more protons, more protons than electrons. So that means it has a net positive charge. It's a positive ion. So this alpha particle, it stole the electron. And this kind of electron robbery is happening all of the time in the cloud chamber. So now let's go through what's going on in the cloud chamber. So in the cloud chamber, we have some air. And as the alpha particle goes past these atoms of air, it ionizes them, creating positive ions. So those are the red circles in the picture. These ions have a positive charge. In the chamber, we also have alcohol. The alcohol molecules are positive on one end and negative on the other end. Yeah. See, they're the little H-shaped droplets there. As you told me, positive and negative charges attract. So the negative end of the alcohol molecule is attracted to the positive ion made by the alpha particle. So the alcohol molecules, they fly to the air atoms that are now ionized, and they surround them. And once you get enough alcohol molecules around one of these ions, you make a droplet of alcohol. And that droplet is big enough for you to see with your eyes. The alpha particle is making many of these droplets as it's zooming through the chamber, making a little cloud. And that's what you're seeing. So if we go forward a little bit, yeah, so those are the droplets that you see, and makes a little cloud trail. And so here we're gonna look at the cloud chamber again. We're gonna zoom in closer to the tracks and see if we can actually see the droplets that I just told you about. Yeah, after the show. There we go, yeah. So you can see the tracks from the alpha particle, and hopefully you can see the little droplets showing up that are making up the cloud. Yeah, very cool. Okay.
So is this spark chamber also full of alcohol?
Not quite. The spark chamber actually works a little differently. Although the spark chamber is also full of gas, as a muon goes through the gas, it ionizes it, leaving a trail of positive ions, just like we saw before. Now, what's different is that this path allows high energy electrons to travel between metal plates in the chamber, creating a huge electric current, and those are the sparks that you're seeing. So, since we're talking about muons again, I think it's time to catch some more. So if you're able to, detectives, please stretch out your arms, increase your surface area, and grab some more muons.
Let's take a look at some of those sparks one more time. Now, after the video's finished loading, I want you to listen really carefully and see if you can hear a click when one of them appears. You hear that? Here's the spark chamber setup. You can see the chamber, some electronics, and a gas canister. Let's take a closer look. The actual chamber is a sealed box. You can see it's crossed with horizontal aluminium panels. A spark in the chamber will travel between these panels. Inside the chamber is a mixture of different gases. Remember, this is what gets ionized by the muons. The gas mixture comes from the canister and includes helium, neon, and argon, which gives it that pinkish reddish color, and it's fed into the back of the chamber with this hose. Now, we only want the spark chamber to produce sparks when a particle passes through it, so we create a trigger that uses this panel of electronics below the chamber. To do this, we use a crystal of sodium iodide. The crystal produces light when a particle ionizes it, and at the end of the crystal is a device called a photomultiplier, or PMT, that converts the light into an electric pulse. We place these special detectors made of crystal and PMT both above and also below our spark chamber. Now, electrical signals from both of the detectors then get fed into this orange electronic unit that sends a trigger if both PMTs fire at the same time. It's known as a coincidence unit. It's a lot of information, so let's go over this again with an example. A muon flies in from the top of the screen. The muon ionizes the top crystal, producing light, and continues down through the chamber, leaving a trail of ions in its wake. At the same time, the light is converted to an electrical pulse that travels down a wire to the coincidence unit. The particle leaves the chamber and ionizes the bottom crystal, which also sends an electrical pulse to the coincidence unit. Now, since two pulses have arrived at the same time, the coincidence unit sends a trigger to the high voltage to turn on. The aluminium plates then produce an arc of electricity that travels through the ion trail like a path. And you can also see the ammeter in the bottom measure an electric current. But what about this particle coming in from the bottom now? Well, it ionizes the crystal at the bottom of the detector and the spark chamber, but because it doesn't also pass through the top crystal, the high voltage is not triggered, and so no tracks are seen. So now you know how the spark chamber works. Next, we'll be talking about detectors that use liquids and solids as the ionizing medium instead of gases. So, in the early 1950s, a particle detective here at Berkeley Lab decided to try using a liquid as the detecting medium instead of a cloud vapor or a gas in the spark chamber. So instead of vapor trails or sparks, like what we saw in the cloud chamber and spark chamber, the particle passing through would leave a tiny track of bubbles. So 2 Nobel Prizes for Berkeley Lab actually came from this. In 1960, to Donald Glaser for the invention of the bubble chamber, and again 8 years later to Louis Alvarez, who improved it and used it to detect new particles. Okay, junior detectives, we have our clues, we have some of our detecting equipment, and we've been able to ID a few perps, those muons, those alpha particles. I guess it's case closed.
There is still a lot for us to learn about our universe. We've been able to identify most of the particles, but there's a lot about the interactions between them we still do not understand.
That's fair. Okay, I'm going to go and turn on the spark chamber then. I'll be back.
Oh, wait a second. No, come back. For modern particle detectives, our experiments became a bit more complicated. There are still small experiments that do detective work, but many of them have now, become big, and it's hard to see the tracks.
Big? How big?
Well, this big. The experiment I work on is 18 foot high, so it's like the size of a T-Rex. So I would say it will definitely not fit in Rebecca's or Joanna's labs. Okay, but dinosaurs aside, we are looking here at the debris of particle collisions in the STAR experiment. This is the experiment I work with. And I don't think that any of you would be actually able and would want to measure tracks by hand here. There are so many of them, and they are really hard to tell apart by eye. We actually have managed to reconstruct all the particle tracks because we can sample them in 3D, and we use sophisticated electronics and computers to do so. So let me show you an example of how we do it. So first we can see a simulation of a particle collisions. So we accelerate particles almost to the speed of light and we smash them. And we analyze the debris of these collisions in huge particle detectors, as you can see here. The device is called particle accelerator, and we measure this debris in detectors. Okay, so I will show you right now a bit how we reconstruct tracks in modern particle detectors. So this diagram is actually a typical detector at the collider experiment. And each of these rings is actually a different detector system. Each detector system is optimized to see a certain kind of particles or measure a different thing. And these thin rings in the middle, you can see, are tracking detectors that measure the position of certain particles through ionization, which you already learned about. So each time ionization occurs in one of these detectors, you record a location where it happened. And then you can use this information, these locations, and connect the dots to find the track of a particle. So with information from the other outer detectors, you can put together clues and figure out the energy of the particle, or you can identify it. You can say what particle it was. You can think about the system like some sort of a camera. Whenever you take a picture, you record exactly what is happening in every location of the detector. There are a lot of detectors and they are really big. So there is a lot of information in each picture, and trust me, a lot of data. It takes time and effort to match the data to detectors and figure out all the clues we have. And this is actually our work of particle physicists. And it's too complicated to do it by hand, so we use actually computers to do this. So here are the pictures of us working with our detectors. So here I am in the middle, actually, with our enormous star detector in Brookhaven National Lab. Rebecca also used to work with a huge particle physics detector, which is called Atlas. It's located in CERN in Switzerland. And it's actually even bigger than STAR. It's 85 feet tall. You imagine, it's really huge. But it has a very similar cylindrical construction. It's very typical for this kind of collider experiments. But it's not the only type of detector used in modern particle physics, I think.
That's right, Maria. And so now you're going to come with me on a tour of my lab where I make detectors. Oh. Sorry. There we go. All right. So, as you know, we're looking for very, very small invisible particles, and that is not easy to do. It takes a lot of work to make a detector, so I'm going to show you some of the different things that we do here. Today, we've talked about detectors that work through ionization in gases and in liquids. In here, we make detectors that work through ionization in solids. Specifically, we're making semiconductor detectors to look for energetic photons. Photons were one of the particles, the fundamental particles, on Detective Maria's particle wheel. These energetic photons we're looking for are called gamma rays. The gamma rays come into our solid detector and make ions inside. We collect these ions and get out electric pulses. Those pulses are our clues. The detectors are made from crystals of special materials with very thin layers of other materials put on them. This is an example of a crystal that can be made into a detector. You can see it's a little bit dirty and scratched. So before we can make it into a detector, we have to clean it. That's what we use this chemical bench over here for. Now, Once we've cleaned a crystal, it looks like this. See how nice and shiny and polished it is? These two crystals are ready to be made into detectors. So to do that, we have to put on thin layers of other materials onto the crystals. There are many ways of doing it. You can put different materials in different ways at different temperatures and different patterns and so on, depending on what you need your detector to do. So depending on what layers you put on, the detector can look and behave differently. Here are some crystals with a variety of shapes and colors and different patterns on them too. So since we have to be able to do a lot of different layers, we need a lot of machines for that. So all of these machines here are used to put thin layers onto our detectors. This machine here in front of me, this one is used to put aluminum layers onto our detectors. So inside the machine, I put a glass slide and I put some aluminum on it. So let's see how it looks. Oh. See? So here on the glass slide, we have a layer of aluminum. The aluminum layer is actually thinner than the size of a human hair. It's very, very thin. Now, once we've put all of our layers onto our detectors and they look nice, we're still not finished because we need electronics to run these detectors and to collect data from them. So many scientists who work in this lab work with electronics. They do things like design circuit boards, like these ones here. They work with tools like microscopes and soldering irons to join electronics together. We also design different cables like this one. This orange thing is actually a cable, which is very cool. So lots of cool electronics. Once we have all those electronics joined with our detector, we can go ahead and collect data or clues and analyze. Now here, these are an example of electronic pulses that we could see from a detector. Oh, there they are. These pulses are our clues. Now I told you that we use these detectors to look for very energetic photons here in this lab. So we already know what particle we're detecting. The question that we're trying to answer is, where are the energetic photons that we see coming from? So we use the clues gathered with our detectors and our powers of deduction and try to solve that mystery. Thank you for joining me.
So thanks for everyone, all of our panelists for joining us today, Dr. Carney, Dr. Zurich, and graduate student Joanna Snorsnell, who is also a researcher here at Berkeley Lab. I'm going to ask all of them to turn back on their videos right now because we've had some questions over the course of our session in our chat box, but we also will spend the last 8 or so minutes answering a few questions. So Joanna, when you have a chance, you can come back on. And Maria, I saw you answering a few questions. I wanted to ask you all, we're doing all this particle detection, and we know we love fundamental science and learning about the world here at Berkeley Lab, but how is this research helping us in our everyday lives? Like, what's this changing now that we know about a particle or detecting a particle? How does this actually affect us on a personal daily life experience? So Rebecca, I'll let you go first.
Thanks, Faith. So for me, at least, I study particle physics because I want to understand these building blocks of matter and understand how the universe works. And I think it's fair to say that directly, this kind of work doesn't have an immediate application. In some of the work we do in designing these detectors, in producing the technology to accelerate particles or observe them, we uncover new technology that can be applied elsewhere. For example, in the healthcare industry. But in and of itself, I personally do this work just because it's interesting and I want to understand more about our world.
Maria?
So
go ahead, Joanna, since you started. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the detectors which I work on, they're used for a lot of things, and some of them you may see in your daily life. So For example, like at the airport, you have some security. They measure, they like image your luggage, things like that. You can use detectors for that. Detectors are used for smoke alarms. So there are particle detectors in your everyday life that maybe you don't notice, but they're there. Yeah.
Yeah, so the only thing I would like to add is that generally the whole field of particle and nuclear physics is pushing lots of different boundaries, and it's really at the, really frontier in computing, in electronics, in developing new detectors. And I'm always bringing this example. Probably it's already boring after repeating it several times, that actually particle physics pushed the development of the internet. And we wouldn't be talking now to each other if not particle physicists who wanted to communicate between each other and get information about their data and communicate over the network. So the whole field is somehow, even very, very fundamental, it's pushing lots of branches of different technologies.
And we appreciate that kids are watching. We got that message. And they asked also, why would you choose science as a way of living, as a career path? Why choose science to be a career path? We'll start back with Joanna, and then Rebecca and Maria.
Well, I love having science as my career path. When I come into the lab, I work with a bunch of people who are very excited about what they're doing. People are doing all kinds of crazy things, coming up with crazy experiments and playing around, having fun. And it's I'm not doing the same thing each day. Some days I'm coding on the computer and some days I'm working in the lab, and I really like that. So I like working with passionate people and learning new things and doing different tasks at work.
Rebecca?
Hi, yeah, I have to echo what Joanna said. One of the great things about any sort of fundamental research is that you have to be a bit of a jack of all trades. You have to be able to work with electronics and computers that can do the things that we as flesh and blood humans, we can't see these tiny things, these very energetic things. We need to rely on our detectors and our equipment to help us, and that means you really need to understand at the very fundamental level how computers work, how particles are going to interact with your material to help design it. But I also agree with Joanna that the people really make it very special. I think particularly in particle physics, there's really a culture of people wanting to help each other, and not everyone is, everyone knows in the field that you can't know everything about what you're doing, so you rely on each other. There's a lot of teamwork, and I think that's a really great working environment.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more with all of this. I think that science is a sort of job which brings us closer to understanding the world, but it's also fun. It's also like solving riddles and puzzles. It keeps you fresh and young. It's always diverse. And I think that what I like the most is the aspect which Rebecca said, on top of everything of this very stimulating environment, that particle physics and huge particle physics collaborations is a community. We build a community of scientists who are some of them are specialized in more detectors, some of them more in computing, some of them are somewhere in between. And we do publish papers with thousands of authors because we do believe that every single person in this group of thousands of people is important to bring science together and just show it to the world. So I absolutely, the community aspect of particle physics is amazing.
Awesome. So to end on that note, we know that particle physicists need to be collaborators. They need to be able to share with each other. They need to be able to think about different things and from different perspectives, and to appreciate each other in those different strengths. And also just be able to think outside the box. I think that was said as well. So thank you to all of our particle detectives today and our researchers here at Berkeley Lab for sharing with us their science. And we thank you all for spending a Friday afternoon with us. We are recording this. We'll do a little editing and it will be posted to share with other young scholars and future particle physicists that might want to get into this work. So thank you guys. And we'll see you in January for our next live science event. All right. Have a great day.